Good afternoon, TEDsters. Coming from New York, I want to congratulate Auckland on fielding such a fine and morally upright set of mayoral candidates. There is no one seeking catharsis through candidacy. I want to do a shout out to the New Yorkers in the audience. I know that there's at least 5. 17 years ago, I had a revelation on the road to Kari. I was travelling with this man. Don't worry, I was doing the driving. Who told me a story about New Zealand's unique and powerful position in the world. Big moment coming up, I thought. A possible lifetime eureka moment. I slowed the car. My passenger was Kevin Kelly from San Francisco, the founding editor of Wired magazine and a principal articulator of the digital zeitgeist that was gripping the world in 1996 and which is in full flower and force all around us today. Kevin was in New Zealand to give presentations on the exponential network effects of the World Wide Web, which was a mere 3 years old. I'd seen Kevin present at the TED conference in Monterey earlier that year, so I invited him to lunch in Auckland, and it being Sunday, we went for a drive. And on that road to Kari, he was pumping me full of questions about New Zealand. Who? What? Why? And I made a statement along the lines of that it seemed to me that a disproportionate number of New Zealanders had changed the world in some way, though I did not know why. New Zealand is a really easy place to explain, said my travelling companion, as he invoked the theory from evolutionary biology called punctuated equilibrium, or Pancake, which states in part that change happens first on the edge of the species. Where the population is most sparse and new life forms have the freest environment in which to emerge, evolve, and adapt. New Zealand's role in the world, therefore, said Kevin Kelly, is to be world-changing. New Zealand's role in the world is to be its edge. The car accelerated. I was thunderstruck. My mind went wild with imagination. My whole view of New Zealand reframed in a few simple sentences. Today, how might we embrace this challenge of being the world's edge? How might we embrace this calling? How might we leverage and communicate the unique possibilities this powerful metaphor offers us? This matters because nation branding today is practiced aggressively by many countries, regions, and cities wishing to promote trade and investment. How do we define a New Zealand story? And how do we communicate it and leverage it using this powerful edge metaphor? I want to show you 2 sets of data that put into perspective the challenges and the possibilities. And this first heat map is from the field of behavioural economics. This heat map has been developed by a cutting-edge research technology company in Toronto, and it is designed to show deep and penetrating insights into market landscapes. The map has 98 attributes across 8 categories. The hotter the colour, the greater the emotional resonance. And this map is from an international survey of the perceptions of many countries and regions. And this is a map of New Zealand. And as you can see, we have a strong, warm, positive core, with few negatives spilling to the outside of the map. We're perceived as being competent, reliable, easygoing, kind, balanced. Progress, however, does not come from balance. Progress does not come from the centre. This is a profile of our Pacific neighbour, California, with its powerhouse economies of Silicon Valley, Hollywood, the Napa Valley. California is where TED came from. And as you can see, California's profile is strong and it's hot. And it exhibits characteristics such as being creative, confident, passionate, innovative, a leader. How can New Zealand be in this space? Clearly, from the evidence seen from the stage today, there's a great many people who are playing in this space, but that is not how we are perceived by the world. How might we get there? The other set of data is an analysis of the international media coverage of New Zealand. And what is surprising and concerning about this profile is that our negative coverage equals the volume of our positive coverage. And in the practice of reputation management, this sets off alarm bells. This is a suboptimal performance. How do we stretch? How do we convert our neutrals and negatives to positives? This profile also speaks as to how we might reframe a New Zealand story based around a unified idea that drives better outcomes. What might that new New Zealand story be? Who might tell it? To whom do we need to tell the story? Stories need language. Change the language, you change the conversation. We need new language. So some years ago, I set about my own personal nation branding project called the New Zealand Edge, based on the punctuated equilibrium metaphor. And we sought to reframe the perception of New Zealand as small, remote, and irrelevant to edge, the world's edge. In marketing terms, edge is our one-word equity. And out of this comes a compelling personal purpose statement, winning the world from the edge. We've sought to reframe the idea of world-class into world-changing. There are many aspirants to world-class. Being world-changing is a unique position for us in the world. It's in our DNA. We reframed the New Zealand population from 4 million to 5. Language matters. We need new language. By reframing the negative language of expatriation to that of diaspora, the global community of New Zealanders, Aotearoa, whānau, whānui, kiti aonui. And we reframed the idea of brain drain to that of a network. Our website project has identified New Zealanders in over 1,000 international locations. That's 1,000 points of light. And we reframed the idea of tall poppies as our New Zealand legends. The anthropologist Margaret Mead said in the 1950s that it is New Zealand's role to send out its bright young men and women to help run the world. These are our world-changing New Zealanders. We've sought to reframe the idea of New Zealanders as consumers to everyone as an exporter. We have an export or die economic imperative. And we've helped to reframe the idea of this tired colonial symbol to something much more emotionally resonant. The silver fern, the most recognised symbol of New Zealand in the world. This is the flag designed by Lloyd Morrison which we proudly fly on the masthead of our website, nzedge.com, the global life of New Zealanders. We've advertised our proposition. Every world needs an edge. We've successfully embedded our metaphor into international media coverage of New Zealand. This is Time magazine's survey, Going to the Edge. We have two core elements of content on our website. The first is a continuous survey of the world's media for news of our contemporary world changes. And we sample from the Times of London, the New York Times, the Times of India, the Japan Times, and hundreds of other newspapers and magazines for news of our business leaders, scientists, engineers, academics, designers, chefs, artists, musicians, sculptors, filmmakers, policymakers, and our sportsmen and women. And over the decade, we've collected 8,000 stories of inspiration. The other core element of content are our New Zealand legend stories, and we've assembled 100 stories and links to world-changing New Zealanders, people who've changed the world in some big way or some small way. We can learn about these people. We need to know their stories. We can channel them. And our list is headed by a colossus of 20th century science, Ernest Rutherford, the father of nuclear physics. This is the reason why Rutherford is on our $100 banknote. Edmund Hillary, who defined resilience as it's the getting down that counts. And it's great to see that Leanne Pooley's film of Sir Ed's Ascent of Everest is going to premiere at the Toronto Film Festival in September. The name of the film, Beyond the Edge. Catherine Mansfield, who changed the way stories are written. The rustically beautiful Nancy Wake, a third-generation Maori woman who at the top of the Gestapo's most wanted list was known as the White Mouse because of her ability to elude capture. Nancy led an army of 7,000 resistance fighters in the south of France and became the most decorated woman of World War II. Our legends of the skies, aviatrix Jean Batten, who became one of the most famous women in the world at the time of her epic flights across lonely oceans, and William Pickering of 8 Roxburgh Street, Mount Victoria, Wellington, who headed the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at Pasadena that put America into space. Cantabrian Rewi Ali, a key participant in the Chinese Revolution. He founded the work cooperative movement known as Gung Ho, which means work together. Aucklander Harold Williams, witness to the Russian Revolution, the first foreign editor of the Times of London, and one of the most extraordinary linguists in all history, conversant in 58 languages. When they formed the League of Nations in 1935, they brought in Harold Williams to give a personal greeting to every leader who attended. And Aucklander Bruce McLaren, Formula One racer, winner, designer, constructor, engineer, team leader. It's 50 years since the founding of Team McLaren, and big things are happening in Bruce's honour this year from the company based in Surrey, England. And my favourite story of all, Ernest Godward. And his mild demeanour belies a chronic overachiever. With 3 years of formal education, Godward founded a thriving cycle business in Southland in the 1890s, but got bored and started innovating with household devices and products. A mechanised hedge trimmer made out of bicycle parts, a revolutionary egg beater, a burglar-proof window, a spiral hairpin that sold in millions around the world. But most famously, the Godward economizer, a fuel-saving carburettor he made from his factory on the corner of Broadway and Chambers Street in Lower Manhattan, and which was installed in the vehicles of the US Army and in the entire fleet of 3,500 buses and taxis in the city of Philadelphia. And here's the kicker. For 36 years, Godward commuted to the world by ship from Invercargill. He was an extreme multitasker. Not only did he serve as a North Invercargill Borough Councillor, he was an accomplished race driver, swimmer, rower, boxer, musician, portraitist, elocutionist, and he died in 1936 on board the SS Mongolia en route to New Zealand after winning the ship's skipping competition. Ernest Godward had an edge or two or three. So if there's a tweetable line from this presentation, it is this: find your edge. Everyone here has the ability to be extraordinary in your own world, and if you're fortunate, to be extraordinary in the whole wide world. So learn these stories. Find your role models. Channel your inner Ernest. Be inspired. Get involved. These are the action points. Gung-ho! Thank you. Thank you.